Welcome to Rauta, and thank you, Patreon supporters, for supporting this trip to Inferno Festival 2022 in Oslo, Norway. Now, here we have one of the old-timers from Norwegian scene, Anders Udden.
Yes.
And we previously had this chat interview about his death metal band Cadaver, a real old-school band. But man of many projects and arts, he also have other bands, and this time we're talking about a band called Order, which is also with Cadaver playing here at Inferno Festival 2022. And their story is a little bit different, and I'm gonna pick Mr. Udden's head about it.
Yeah.
Order is it's an old school band, but it's also a new band, just with old veterans. Can we start the basics? What is Order all about?
Well, as you just said, it's about old school guys coming together, and basically the name Order, if you think about it, what is the opposite of order?
Chaos?
Yeah, or mayhem.
Or mayhem, yeah.
Which means chaos.
Yeah?
So the Order is...
It's like an inside joke, basically.
It's a inside joke or inside the
anecdote.
Yeah, or like yes, of course, that's why
it makes sense.
Yeah, because it's based around the people that got me started to do this extreme metal, which is the original lineup from Mayhem. As many people don't know about Mayhem, or I guess they know everything about Euronymous and he got killed by.
Yeah,
all that stuff. But previous to all that stuff, they had they started out in '84, and in '86, I was 13 years old, and I was listening to pirate radio, or not pirate radio, but like the media field in the 80s was just like this national radio and TV station in Norway, and then they opened up for local stations. And the local stations in Oslo had really strong transmission to where I was living, which is like 1 hour south from Oslo. And in the week times, they would send metal shows from 12 o'clock at night until into the night, because you could basically have anything on the radio. And one night I was listening to this strange new band that was presenting all kinds of weird underground music, and that was the guys from Mayhem being on this radio station. And they basically kicked the guy who had the program out of the studio and took over the whole thing. And they were playing all, Venom, Celtic Frost, Hellhammer, Death Chamber, all kinds of bands for 3 hours or something. I was listening to this until 3 o'clock in the morning, and I had to go to school the next day really tired. But then I was like, I had to find out who these people are. And eventually I found them in the phone book, and my dad actually drove me to a rehearsal with Mayhem in '86.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, it's funny that you mentioned the 1980s in this respect, because a lot of people think and seem to have this idea that Norwegian thing got started basically like around 1990, 1991, because then it's when the big roles started to go about. But like you said, Mayhem was already there prior, many years earlier, and there were lots of other bands also that started before 1990s.
Oh yeah.
But these members in Order have never been big known for Mayhem's later years, because obviously they departed the band before the band kind of got big.
Yeah.
But they're still important part of the band, and there was this documentary you were also part of that was about Mayhem history, and also the
Helvete one.
Yeah, Helvete one.
That one explains much better than anything else I've seen what it was really about when it started. So, like you said, everybody thinks it started in the 90s, but from my perspective, it started in the mid-80s. So, these guys from Mayhem blew me away, so that sent me into this pathway for me. Actually, my first ever band was a black metal band called Slaught.
Yeah.
And we started out in '86, so I was already doing my black metal way before anybody else did, apart from Mayhem and a few other bands. So when we were approached to do this movie, there was a movie idea like 10 years ago to do like a fictional version of what happened not the one that they made in America, but
not Lord of Chaos.
No, but it would be kind of based on the scene, but not that story, a different kind of story. But you know, what happened previously to all this stuff, it would be like a prequel almost. And to make original music for this movie that would sound like it came from that period, I decided to approach the original Mayhem members that was no longer in the band, Mr. Mannheim on drums and Messiah on vocals. And they are obviously a very important part of the Death Crush album, which was the only album that Mannheim was playing drums to. And Maniac was singing, but Messiah did 2 songs, Pure Fucking Armageddon and a Venom cover. So anyway, I gathered them, they became interested, and I found the first bass player in Cadaver, René Hansen. But he was also in the studio when they did Death Crush.
Okay.
And on the original Death Crush demo, they did like this choir singing goofy thing, and he is in that choir.
Okay.
So he's also on the Death Crush album. So I'm the only one that was not a part of that recording, but I was, you know, a little bit too young. But
exactly. But you were still.
I was there.
Somehow, you were there.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so
essentially,
that was the essence to make this band that would make music from where Death Crush stopped and before the Mysterious, you know, that period of time. What would have happened if that went deeper with those guys? So that was the idea. And then René Hansen, the bass player, died from leukemia in 2014, and we performed in his funeral, playing Triumph of Death with the Hellhammer and Procreation of the Wicked and our own song Savage at the funeral, which was really strange. The first show we really did together was...
That's kind of a weird way to start a career of a new band.
Yeah, so this band, we were told each other that we would probably have this band until we all are dead. And, you know, that's the grim fact of life. But then we, you know, realized we have something here, let's develop it. So now... It's 9 years later already.
And you have 2 albums out now.
2 albums out, and the new one is called The Gospel, which is probably the darkest album I've written together with anyone. And it's really primitive, and it's all about the human condition and the pain and suffering of being a human. So it's like a concept album almost, and it feels like its own world, and I'm really intrigued by how, you know, you can make music with some people and it sounds like this, but with other people you just come up with total different ideas. So it's my old school band. This is older old school than Cadaver is somehow, you know.
Yeah.
It's much more primitive.
But talking about your other band members, what I got from reading parts here and there is that they're more or less Mannheim and Messiah kind of faded away, you know, in a way from metal scene, at least in terms of being active. I got the impression Messiah went more into, I guess, punkish.
He was a punk. He's a punk legend actually in Norway. He has a band called Cockroach Clan. Okay. And Within Range was a band that he was touring Europe and the punk scene in the early 90s when all the metal happened. So, but his roots are in metal, you know. So
was he hard to get into doing metal again and making albums and all that stuff?
Well, at first he was like, maybe, you know, this and that. But then we were like, when we started off rehearsing, we did all these old covers like Celtic Frost, Venom, all that stuff, and it just came back to him like this. So it was like, okay, actually for him it's much easier to do this metal vocals than punk.
Okay.
It's much more physically challenging to sing punk. But Mannheim, he was in the noise and art, like avant-garde scene. So he had been doing like really strange projects, like noise projects, and all kinds of really underground, unknown things. So he was never really out of music either. So he always kept like in shape for playing. So when you say that they fade away from metal, that's true. But they did other things.
Yeah, obviously, you can't take a music out of a musician anyway.
No, exactly. So it's actually, during the pandemic, that's when we wrote this new latest album, and I think that led us into a more extreme version than we did on the previous one. So from here onwards, we'll probably do even more extreme stuff. That's what is inspiring for us, to be these old guys and play more extreme than the young guys. So somehow it's intriguing things. I mean, that's what we feel it sounds like. Maybe we're totally wrong about that, but
Now that you're older than when you started, a lot older, basically there's a whole new generation. I'm not talking about guys who are just merely some 10 years younger, but there are people who are like 30 years younger in the scene and approaching with new ideas, fresh bands and all that stuff. But obviously they're looking up to you veteran guys for your achievements and bands and albums and all kind of stuff. How are these different generations getting linked to one another, since Norway has a rather big and active scene in terms of metal?
It's there's a few new artists that I notice and see, but I don't really spend that much time checking out stuff. Otherwise, I mean, people send me things. But I'm not the perfect guy to ask about what's going on right now, which is the most interesting, because I've been too much in my own world, making my own things. But I noticed that there's always some interesting new things going on, and I think whatever the new generation does should somehow alienate me. If it's really good, it should probably make me feel that I don't understand it. But I don't, because when we did what we did in the 80s and early 90s, the older generation back then, they were the old hippies. And the old hippies that were into really progressive stuff like King Crimson or Frank Zappa and stuff like that, they could understand somehow that we were doing something interesting, which to them sounded like the most extreme King Crimson or Zappa world, but in a different way. But they didn't really connect. They just understood that it was weird. But I have yet to find a new band now that plays something for me which I don't understand at all. Like the same feeling that they probably had. So that probably is out there, but I don't know.
So I was more like interesting because I've seen this happening in Finland anyway. Like people born in 70s, much like me, which are now 40s or getting closer to 50s, and we don't seem to have much in common ground with people like born in the 90s or 2000s. Even though the music might be the same, we're listening to the same bands and all that stuff. But because of the age gap, it's kind of hard to get into the same kind of a mindset and same place. But yet still people who are like in between our ages, like maybe 10, 15 years younger, seem to have the connection between both generations. Is that happening with you? Like, or does it stop like, okay, you're in your almost 50s and then there are people who are like maybe 40s, 35. They might have the similar generational experience. But how much younger you can go without feeling like you said, alienating, like, who are these guys? I don't know what they're doing.
I don't, that's not happened to me yet, so I don't know, maybe that takes me another 10 years or maybe not, because I'm probably too open-minded and too avant-garde to be alienated by anything in music. I can listen to very many different genres even, and notice cool stuff like one artist I discovered in 2020 is Ghost Domain, which is like extreme rap, but he mixes in stuff from black metal and industrial music with rap. And to me that sounds like something which is taking everything twisting it and going somewhere else,
Taking a new level.
taking it to a different place where all the sounds and short songs. His songs are like 2 minutes long. It's all very different from anything I've done, but I recognize it as an extreme art form. So it's not like I'm like, oh, that's impossible to hear or listen to or whatever. I don't think I've gone too extreme to be alienated by extreme. I think.
That's good.
And somehow that it's funny how music is also very connected to the format, because our generation with the tape trading and LPs and then CDs and all that stuff. We have that connection, but now when the new generation basically have everything on the internet, they don't see that, they don't understand the timeline, so they can listen to something from 85 or 2016 or and then
with a click of a mouse.
And then they don't get to experience the development of everything, which is probably a good thing if they want to do something completely new. If you follow
the linear
path, you are kind of stuck in a bit of it where you are really interested, and then you find your thing, and then everything else wanders. But when you listen now to things like, things, if you think about, let's go back to 91 or 92 even, now that's 30 years ago now.
Yeah.
30 years ago in 92, that was 1962. That's before the Beatles.
Exactly.
Which is fucking
crazy.
So when you go all the way back to where we remember things started, if if we did the same thing then, we would be in a place where there was no hard rock at all.
Yeah, exactly.
So the whole timeline just confuses, but also is I think the reason why people are hang up on this genre definitions and why things sound this and that, it's because they found their thing, like let's say death metal. To me, death metal is a total different thing than from somebody who's 10 years younger.
Yeah.
Because to me it started in 84, 85, not in 92 or whatever.
Yeah, I think there's a big gap between 80s and 90s.
When you think about that, it's only 7 years, so that's from now back to 2015.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem like a whole lot of things going on.
But that was like the same thing with black metal. I mean, if you compare the years, say 1991, especially from Norway, to the late 90s, you went from all these post-Bathory things, and suddenly people were dressing up like Matrix movies, and it was like a whole different setting with different sound and songs and all.
But the thing we did with Order was to figure out where we was when we was formed by this. So, but we still think that what we're doing now is not a copy of the past. We want to do something new with our own ideas from the past.
But would you be offended if some people would describe your music, okay, this is a retro band? And before you answer, I'll explain a little bit on the background, because I do a lot of reviews, like almost on a daily basis. And I've seen this kind of a retro renaissance, as I would call it. A lot of death metal bands, for instance, seem to copy like early Stockholm sound, like this kind of a Boss HM2 pedal sound, and emulating as if it was 1991 and Entombed and Dismembered. Bands like that were new. And a lot of bands also seem to be tapping into the 1980s, be it black metal or thrash metal or any kind of extreme metal, and they seem to have this kind of a retro-ish thing, and not in a bad way, but more like trying to get that old school sound and feel and stuff. So do you think you belong in the same box, if you will?
Definitely not. Because I don't want to sound like that. I just make my thing, and it has the past in it. But I'm not trying to make it sound like it's the 80s.
So Order could be definitely sounding modern without losing its originality.
I think what makes it sound old is the fact that back then drums were not supposed to be very technical. If the drummer could play fast, he didn't do all the fills and like the very super technical skilled things, which is come later, because nobody knew how to do it. You know, I've seen those original guys live, how they play blast beats, like Mick Harris from Napalm Death.
Mm-hmm.
I stood next to him watching him play, and I stood next to Pete Sandoval from Morbid Angel. And what strikes me is that their technique and how they do it is completely bound to who they are.
Yeah,
it's not something they have been sitting learning from YouTube how to do this the best technical way.
Yeah,
they are just doing something from their own body, you know. And whatever that does is their sound. So that's how Mannheim is playing drums. He's just doing what he can do, not learned from like a skill set or super
tutorials.
So he's much more like I think what I'm looking for is it's an emotional output of something.
Yeah,
it's an energy flow. So that's how we approach that music, like a flow of energy. How do we capture this feeling? Whatever that is, you know, we're not trying to impress anyone. We're just trying to figure out how to make that feeling work, you know. So that's a very different way to write, I think.
How different is for you to create music for Order when compared to, say, Cadaver?
Well, it basically comes out of what I just said, the energy flow that we feel right there and then, what we try to do together. Just find like movements and when I write for Cadaver, I'm writing riffs and structures from my perspective in a different way, because when I write everything in order together with Mannheim, we never really write. We always just jam together and find something, and then we go from there. So with Cadaver, I'm always just writing the riffs, and then we put things on top of that. So it's a little bit different approach. And sometimes I can sit and play something. I think this can belong to Order, this can belong to Cadaver. You know.
Do you ever end up with a riff like, okay, this could fit either of the bands?
Yeah, sometimes I do. Actually, if you are really, really clever in listening to a few things, there's some similarities in, but that's very subtle, you know.
Okay.
And it's not very obvious.
Now that you're doing gigs and possible tours with both of the bands, could you see or imagine a possibility that you could embark on a tour with both bands during the same time?
We actually did one show like that. And that's very exhausting.
I can imagine. That's why I'm asking.
Like, to play like 2.5 hours and 30 songs or something. No, I would not recommend it. I think then one of those will suffer from me just not being 25 anymore.
Exactly. So age has
then the age limit just comes in a little bit, because you want the energy to be unique, and it's like a marathon then.
All right. Now, before I let you go, similar question which I asked you in the Cadaver interview. If people are like, okay, Order, okay, now I know about the band, but I haven't heard a single song, which song should they start with? Because people of the YouTube generation are going to type on the search window while we speak. So, any favorite ones?
Well, on the new album, I would definitely go and check out the video we did for a song called It Burns. That's a good way to start, because that has the whole insanity and chaos of early Mayhem type stuff, combined with very groovy parts and very expressional vocals and lyrics. So I would start there. I would start with the whole album, actually. The gospel is the album.
Okay.
Yeah.
What can we expect from Order being on stage? What are the key words?
Well, it's like a ceremony. it's more like we don't communicate to the audience. We just play the songs and have like intros in between, and let the frontman Messiah be the leading character. As an older statesman in metal, he looks more and more like a combination of Alistair Crowley and Winston Churchill.
That's a good combination.
Yeah, it's a really weird one, but it's a very unique stage persona. So I would recommend going to see the show if this is coming out before the show.
No, unfortunately.
Okay, so the show was excellent and great.
Yeah, I was going to say that we're going to see order in a couple of days after this one is done. But by the time you people are going to see it, we're already gone forward and see.
Yeah, good. So, we're going to wrap up the festival with the last band out on the John D stage.
Yeah,
on Sunday.
You're going to be headlining that stage.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to watch people who have been drinking 4 days in a row, standing like zombies.
Yeah, that's already what we're feeling on day 2.
Yeah, so that will be interesting.
Yeah.
The audience will be pretty, I think, beaten up, but that's a good beating up.
That's a good beating up.
Yeah.
And this is also a good way to us to, let go us about on our errands. This is Order, this is Anders, and it was nice to have you for a double interview. And so this is my way to say, check out both interviews, because we're gonna talk a little bit different topics about 2 different bands. So same artist, 2 kinds of music and all that stuff. Now, people, you stay safe and be metal. This is Rauta. Take care and see you soon with more stuff coming your way.
I can say kippis.
Kippis. All right. Thank you so much. This has been an utmost pleasure to have you. Just talking memory lane and all the information around the bands.
Trying to